Hey everybody, I hope you're staying healthy, washing your hands, staying 6 feet away from everybody. I'm James Riley. I'm back to read more from Half Upon a Time. This is going to be chapter 4. Where we left off, May was telling Jack how she got kidnapped with her grandmother, and that something had gone missing in their house. And the way she was telling it was by kind of telling Jack, but Jack had a storybook that had kind of been handed down through his family, and it kind of recorded everything she was saying and showed pictures and stuff. And that I mentioned that had another purpose in the last video, and it does later in the series, but it's also kind of a cheat because when you just have a character telling something, it can get kind of boring. You're just kind of waiting for something interesting to happen. So I used that as a way to kind of show through pictures what was happening too, so I could cheat a bit and make it hopefully a bit more exciting. So we'll see if that worked. We're on chapter 4 of Half Upon a Time. Downstairs I heard this huge explosion, May said quietly, staring at the picture of the hand in the flame. Voices yelling too. One of them was Grandma, but I didn't know who the other one was, so I ran to the stairs to look. A new illustration began to paint itself onto the page, this one showing May glancing down the stairs to find her grandmother and one of the largest men Jack had ever seen, dressed entirely in green. They were talking about something. I can barely remember, May said softly. Jack nodded, then absently glanced over at the text where words that May could barely remember drifted up from the ether. Snow White, betrayal, cursed, and mirror. And then 3 words that made his blood run cold. The Wicked Queen. He gasped, suddenly understanding who the man in green was and what might be happening. I know, right? May said, not exactly on the same page as he was, at least not figuratively. And things are about to get worse, because while my back was turned, the things from my wall attacked. The picture showed what May remembered. A vicious monster about half her size leapt at her, a horrifying axe in one of its hands. Behind it, more monsters were swarming in from the burning blue hole in the wall, eager looks in their eyes. They all jumped on me, May said with a shiver. I kicked as hard as I could, and I know I hit a few, but there were too many of them. They picked me up and carried me into the hallway. The new picture showed May, held in the hands of the monsters, being presented to the man in green like some kind of gift. Her grandmother's hands, feet, and neck had all been chained together with huge iron bands, and the older woman looked both furious and worried. He asked me who I was, May said, pointing at the man in green. Who might you be, girlie? Said the man in green, according to the book. And I called him some names, May said. The book printed something garbled. They weren't the nicest names, May admitted. Anyway, he told those monsters to take me back to the palace, then to look for something. Find that crown! We need it to use the mirror, the man in green yelled in the book. My grandmother struggled, May said, her eyes locked on the illustration, but he just picked her up and carried her over his shoulder like she weighed nothing. And then he said something I didn't understand, and another blue fire showed up. The next picture showed a circle of blue flame burning on the wall in front of the man in green, who was carrying May's grandmother into the circle. Inside it, Jack could make out some kind of tunnel of the same color fire, ending in a second circle. And in that second circle of blue flame stood a figure he couldn't make out, a figure that looked almost like a woman. He shuddered, the room feeling colder all of a sudden. Grandma yelled something about how he should leave me behind, but that I wasn't important, May said, but he just laughed and said if she cared that much, I'd definitely be coming along. So they carried me in right behind her. Only, she trailed off briefly, then shrugged. Only I struggled while we were in that tunnel. I guess the fire wasn't that stable, because it didn't take much for me to knock one of the monsters off balance, and they dropped me. Not knowing what else to do, I jumped. She pointed at the picture now painting itself onto the page, of May diving headfirst into the tunnel's wall, childlike hands reaching out to grab her fleeing form. And that's all I remember, she said. In the book, 3 dots appeared, as if the story wasn't quite finished. That's when we found you, Jack said, and a final illustration appeared, showing Jack bent over the unconscious princess, the circle of blue fire still burning in midair, his grandfather looking on with a big smile on his face. Right, May said. So if you start talking from here, I should find out why you started making out with me? Jack blushed. We can probably skip that part. May glared at him for a second, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Emergency numbers, she reminded him. Probably pointless, but who knows? She unfolded the paper, then gasped as a silver necklace slipped out. She caught it as it fell and held it up to get a closer look. At the end of the chain was a golden crown. This is my grandmother, she said quietly. She never takes it off. Jack frowned. What does the paper say? May slipped the chain over her head and unfolded the rest of the note. May, she read, keep this hidden. It's the key to everything. She paused, holding up the necklace to examine it. I think I understand, Jack said. Keep reading. If I am taken, May continued, you'll find help in the Black Forest. Remember May stopped reading suddenly, swallowing hard before continuing. Remember I love you always, my beautiful month of May. She put the note down and turned to Jack, her eyes wet. I guess I shouldn't have shown you the necklace, huh? Jack sighed. Thanks for the trust. But it all makes sense, Princess. I just can't believe you didn't mention the most important part of your story before. Which part? May asked, wiping her eyes. The guy in green? Not the huntsman, no, Jack said, though he was my first clue. The huntsman? May repeated. You know who that guy is? I mean, only from stories, Jack said, but that's what I'm talking about. That's how I know who your grandmother is. May stared back at him. Who is she? She asked. Who she is? May asked. But how would you know that? You've never met her. She's not from wherever here is. Oh, yes she is, Jack said, but she's been gone for years. This is huge, May. What are you talking about? She shouted at him. Before Jack could answer, though, someone banged on the front door. Jack jumped up to open it, wondering why his grandfather didn't just come in. Except it wasn't his grandfather. Instead, it looked to be about 20, maybe 30, of the village boys. And standing at the front of the boys was Robert, the oldest, meanest, and strongest of all the boys in their village. Not as much a bully as some kind of horrible tornado of evil. Hey there, Jack, Robert said with a smile. Your grandfather's been telling the whole town that you found yourself a princess. He looked over Jack's shoulder to where May stood with a confused look on her face. Congratulations, princess. Me and the boys have come here to rescue you. May glanced from Robert to Jack and back again. She started to say something, then looked down at her shirt. Okay, that's the last time I wear this stupid thing, she said, seriously. That's the end of chapter 4. We're going to find out what happens with Robert and his friends. Probably nothing good in the next chapter. You can probably guess what Jack is thinking based on your knowledge of fairy tales. May is not willing to go there yet. She also doesn't get all the signals, the clues that Jack is seeing. So we will see what happens when she eventually realizes what he does. So come back in a few days for more of Half Upon a Time, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much.